Hey guys, it's Derp Wiggles here, coming at you with another New World PTR build guide. This one is completely different than the ones I've been doing lately. I play a lot of point tank because I am the governor of a company and I shot call a lot, and point tank is just super easy for me to shot call as. So those are the builds that I've been playing the most of, doing a lot of wars in that role. So I kind of focused on what I knew best. But that's not where I got my start. I got my start doing duels. I spent, I rushed to 60. I was one of the first four people who was level 60 on my old server, Ptolemaeus. I would duel all day, every day with a bow and rapier, and I did once OPRs hit, I did a lot of OPRs. But then I got more serious about being a governor of like a competitive casual company that's now going more competitive. Um, and it's being the governor of a company is a huge time sink. So if you're in a company that's any larger than like a few people, it's just your friends, give your governor a big high five. You know, buy them some chimichangas or something. Do something to show your support because those guys work their asses off. But I really wanted to show you guys what I think is going to be one of the best builds and most fun builds for, even after some nerfs and stuff, for the Greatsword. And that is a Greatsword Rapier build. This is what I plan on using for 3v3s, for dueling, when the rank duels and stuff come out that they hinted about, the 1v1s, the 5v5s, like all the ranked stuff. And maybe even as, like a backline harass type build in OPR. Right now, my current build for that is Great Axe Blunderbuss in light armor. I run Net Shot, the Claw Shot, and the Shrapnel Blast on my Blunderbuss, and I run Charge, Reap, and Gravity Well on the Great Axe. And it's a lot of fun because there's a lot of harass potential. There's huge burst damage potential. It's just great for killing healers. So, but this is kind of similar, without the as much instant burst potential as the Blunderbuss, because that's still, even after this patch, is going to be the single highest burst damage weapon in the game. I'm talking about instant burst. But this is going to come in at a close second, and it's going to have a lot more survivability and sustainable damage. So you're going to be able to get in there and just continuously lay down the pain with this build and get out as fast as you can, get in as fast as you can, and just keep your cooldowns up basically always. And I'll just kind of jump right into it. So, as you can tell, it's the Great Axe and Rapier combo. I'll respec, and I am going to go basically 150 con. I'm going to go into Dex, and then I'm going to go into Int. And I'll tell you why. So, and then whatever's left over, I like to do this, because who cares? So with food, I'd be at 150 con. So you're still getting that negative 10% of critical damage taken. You're getting a huge 10% damage increase to backstabs and critical hits. You're getting everything you want. Guaranteed crit after dodge. You're getting the 10% bonus to random damage against stunned, slowed, or rooted enemies. This is huge, and I'll tell you why. 10% bonus to backstab and headshot damage. This is also huge. You're getting a lot of good stuff from the decks. The only thing that's really not important is this is for your Rapier, because you're going to rely on Rapier for attack and defense and getting away. A little bit of extra into strength, because who cares, why not? And then with food, it looks like this, right? So I'm going to put my con food on, and now I'm at 150, 50, 300, right? So, and then 9. But what you're doing with this build is it's a complete outclass build. This is going to be somewhat high difficulty. Some of your stuff's going to be harder to land, but when you do, you're just going to murder stuff. high mobility, high outplay potential, insane damage potential, and it's just super fun. So this is one of the only builds that I actually recommend taking crosscut. So, and I'll kind of tell you why. You can take steadfast strikes, any of these three, the steadfast strikes, crosscut, or relentless rush work. I take this because if you do manage to land that third hit, they're just dead. So it also gets grit. The final strike, it's if they're below 50, you get up 100% bonus damage. And if you're an onslaught, it's if they're below 75. So you could take somebody with crosscut from like 60% hit points to 0, right? If you do it right. I take Skyward Slash because the stagger is huge, the damage potential is huge. Relentless Rush is good, but I'm honestly just not a super huge fan unless you're going for the bruiser clump damage. It just doesn't really make sense to me. And then I take Calamity Counter because this is one in duels, in like 1v1s and 3v3s and stuff like that in open world. The knockback is actually beneficial. So whether you charge this up and block a bunch of attacks, or if you just kind of use it as an iframe ability, it's going to be good either way. And that allows you to use the perk for it, which gives you a bunch of stamina back. Because you're not really taking like the Skyward Slash perk is good. The Nullifying Slash is really good on the weapon. It's okay. But I would say this is better. Leeching crosscut isn't that great. It's like bending execute almost exactly. The steadfast strikes perk is actually really good, and the perk for relentless rush is good. But if you get it on your armor, you're fine. So you can take this on your armor. You can take this on your armor if you take relentless rush, and you could have this on your weapon. And there's a good weapon that comes with it that you could get for free. But you lead very heavily into the onslaught stance. So I'll just kind of go through it. You start it with crosscut all the way down. So you're going to get onslaught or crosscut, does 1,000,000 damage. I think it's a total of 400% damage or something. Yeah. So 110, 240, yeah, 400% weapon damage. If you hit all three, they're dead, right? It gets grit, and then this increases the likelihood of you just straight up executing somebody if you hit all three of them. Heavy Blade is a must-have because it gives you 50% armor pen on heavy attacks. The haste is actually really good for duels. It's a 5-second haste after using any onslaught ability, so any of these. Then I go into Skyward Slash. It's a 220% weapon damage ability if you use them both. If you do both of them. And it staggers. It also applies a rend, so if you're already in onslaught stance, it applies 3 stacks of 5% rend for 10 seconds. Super huge. Skyfall Sword, at a follow-up attack, deals an additional 140% weapon damage on top of the 80 that's from the first hit, so that's the 220. And then the disease is good, but you in duels and stuff, it's good in 3v3s, and in duels you're more taking it for the follow-up attack being 3 meters, so even if you miss, they're still getting hit. You want to take the aggressive shift to make sure you get into onslaught stance. Step and strike is really good as well. After you dodge, you gain a 10% in power for the next 3 hits within 10 seconds. That's huge. The hitting foes with what this does is it's kind of offsetting your path of onslaught. So light attacks are going to do your cooldowns. Oh no, wait. This is offsetting your step and strike is offsetting your path of onslaught because you're getting your stamina back with each heavy hit that you do. And then hitting your foes reduces Greatsword cooldowns by 2% or 10% for charged heavies. You're always going to be doing charged heavies, so if you do all 3 and you hit all 3 on your heavy chain, it's going to be a 30% CDR. Critical hit chances increase by 10% when attacking a foe with a debuff. They will have debuffs from this. They will have debuffs from this if you do it right with bleeds. And then this can add rend. But yeah, so if they have a debuff on them, which they will from Sundering Riposte or bleeds or whatever, they're going to have a debuff. So you're going to get 10% crit chance. Aggressive shift allows you to go into onslaught stance just by heavy attacking, and then the haste. So, and then I take calamity counter because of knockback. Like I said, it does 100% weapon damage AoE. It's also just basically like riposte, right? It's just another type of riposte, except it's a little bit more directional. And it's a 360-degree AoE knockback if you do it right. It also adds a bleed, so each stack deals 5% weapon damage at max 5 stacks. So if you let this stack up all the time and then you get this off, it actually ends up being a 25% bleed per second for 6 seconds, right? So that's actually, it's not too bad. It's 150% weapon damage for a bleed. That's not terrible. And in this situation, you actually do want to get all 3 blocks off, right? Or 5 if you can get it. Like somebody uses leeching, if somebody uses flurry or something on you, and you pop this up, like there you go. You just got 150% bleed and a rend and a stagger. And then if you're already in Defiant stance, it heals you for 20% of the damage you do. If you're in Onslaught stance, it gives a 25% increased chance to crit. I take Wary Posture. I actually might want to take this because it gives a bigger Fortify. So I'd probably drop Wary Posture to take Perfect Vigilance. Yeah, let's just do that. So I'm going to redo this real quick. What am I dropping here? This one, and this one, for this and this. There we go. No, not for that, for this. Boom. So you're going to want Perfect Vigilance over Wary Posture. It's just better. If you're hit at full health, it reduces your damage taken by 20%. You get Fortify for 3 seconds. So it's just good. If you have your Greatsword out and you get hit at all, you get a 20% Fortify, so that's just great. Blade Honing's not bad either, because you're going to have a lot of buffs up from this build, from switching back and forth. And then Guarded Shift, blocking for 2 seconds, causes you to enter Defiant stance. With Greatsword, you can actually, like, you want to block every now and then, especially if you see a big hit coming in. Like, you could dodge it or you could block it, but with dodge rolls, like, getting nerfed a little bit, it might be better to block some stuff. And blocking allows you to enter Guarded Shift, so if you're under a lot of pressure and you block or use Calamity Counter, it's just going to send you right into Defiant stance. It means you take 15% less damage, you deal 15% less damage, and your heavy attacks now add a block to it. So just heavy attacking can kind of keep you in Defiant stance if you do it right. Faultless Defender reduces stamina damage by 50% when blocking attacks just after raising your guard or with card point. So it's actually more beneficial when you have Faultless Defender to, say somebody's about to do a light attack on you, and you just block it really quick and you time it right. Not only are you going to take barely any stamina damage, but you're also going to put a 5% rend on them for 10 seconds, and it stacks up to 3 times, and every time you apply a new stack, it resets the 10 seconds. So you could get this going for up to 30 seconds, which is like basically a whole fight, right? And have them at 15% rend, plus bleeding, plus all kinds of stuff. And then Arrow Deflection enables you to block ranged attacks, but it increases stamina damage from blocking any attacks by 10%. So this kind of offsets that, but it synergizes really well. So I'll walk you through these abilities. Calamity Counter is basically a block, right? And then it does a spin move, and now you're in Defiant stance, and you have blocks on your heavies. They're kind of slow, but the first one you hit will send you into Onslaught stance. And Crosscut is a really slow ability, but if you hit all 3, which you can hit at least the first and the second if you do it right, or the first and the third if you do it right, and that's because you're taking everything that everybody normally takes. Full right side on Rapier plus on guard. I still think this is the best way to go. They're nerfing this, but if you're actually using this to attack, it's not really getting a nerf, right? So if you're using evade how it's supposed to be used on the Rapier, how it's intended to be used, it's still really good. And if you have omnidirectional evade on your armor, it actually does a lot of damage. And you can do it really, really, really quickly because of the critical strikes reduce all cooldowns. Individual successful light attacks reduce the cooldown of this ability by 30% each. Haste for 3 seconds after successfully evading through an enemy attack. Evading forward gains 15% increased damage. So if you have omnidirectional evade, Adagio is wherever. You don't have to dodge forward. But you gain a 15% increased damage on your next light attack. And then gain 20 stamina after successfully evading through an enemy attack. So if you're using evade to evade attacks and deal damage, it's still really good. So I just keep this entire setup. I'll go through really quick. Deals 10% more damage when your stamina is below 40%. Gain 3 stamina on any hit, so you're toggling your stamina a lot. Critical strikes reduce all cooldowns by 5%. Feeds into everything you do. Gain 3% haste for 4 seconds on Rapier hits. Can stack up to 4 times. So if you're spamming evade like you should be, and just evading through all of their shit and hitting them, you're going to be building a lot of haste really quickly. I go full down riposte because that increases the stun on riposte, and then priority reduces cooldown of Rapier abilities by 20% when you land a riposte. Insult to injury if riposte is successfully hit. Gain in power, increasing damage done by 10% for 30 seconds. And riposte is just good, right? Counter attack, dealing 50% weapon damage, staggering and stunning them for 2 seconds. And you're also briefly invulnerable upon a successful riposte. So it's just good. And then flesh is your mobility tool, right? So it does 145% weapon damage, is really good. And if you land it right, and you use flesh to go through them, and you hit your light attack, your mouse button, when you're right behind them, it actually does bonus damage. So killing an enemy with this reduces cooldown by 80%. That's meh. But after performing flesh, your next critical strike within 5 seconds deals 15% more damage. That's also huge. And then pressing light attack at any time while during fleece will stop and perform a static continuation attack, dealing 115% damage. So that's, you go through them, dealing 145%, and then you left click, and it's another 115%. So that's 260 weapon damage, which is pretty significant in this build. You don't really need Perfectionist because you're not going to be at full health all the time. So I use that to go through Adagio. Or on guard, sorry. But yeah, and then that combo is basically, essentially what you do is you open with your Greatsword, right? They close on you. You either open with your Greatsword or your Rapier. If you're baiting out for the riposte, you riposte, proc your riposte, switch, immediately go over to cross, cut, and since they're stunned, you're going to break them out of the stun with the first hit. They're going to dodge the second. And then the tracking on this is actually pretty decent, so you can usually land the third hit, which is the big hit. The third hit is the one that does 160. So that's 270% weapon damage right there. And if they're below 75% health or 50% health, you're doing 100% bonus damage, right? So that is a 320% weapon damage hit on that last one if they're below 75%. So riposte into crosscut will do a massive amount of damage, especially on anybody in medium or heavy. Like, people in light are still, they're going to be RP walking, especially now after the way this works. The new patch, after you get hit, you RP walk for a second. It's like 1.5 seconds. So unless they blow a lot of stamina to get out of that dodge, and there's a brief period where you can't dodge after you get hit with light armor now. So you riposte. The first one's a guaranteed hit, right? They're slowed and stunned, and your first and second might hit, or your first and third will hit. And then once they collapse back on you, you just cross counter by your time, rupture, and then now you're in heavy attack mode because they're probably almost dead, right? And if they're not, you chase them down. and then you use evade to evade their shots and do light attacks. Or what you could do is you could riposte into getting behind them. Heavy attack's going to do a lot of damage. Evade directly into that, and then you go through, right? And then you flush through them, and then do your attack afterwards. And you could use this as your riposte. They're staggered. You go directly into crosscut. Has a less likelihood of hitting multiple hits if you do it that way. I would prefer to do riposte, so you can even riposte and then dodge roll behind them. Or if you do it right, you could actually use evade to get behind them, and it'll whirl around. So like, you could evade from the front of somebody all the way to the back end facing them if you use evade, and then you don't hit with it, and then go directly into this, right? Because now you're behind them getting guaranteed crits. So you're getting guaranteed crits on top of 100% increased weapon damage. It's insane weapon damage from that ability, those two abilities alone. It's just massive, massive outplay. And then this is just for plague and massive AoE damage. If you look at how big, 3 meters is actually quite large. So, yeah, it's a pretty sweet build. This is what I'm going to be playing around with duels. This is going to be my favorite duel build for a while. I was out there dueling people in Greatsword with it for a long time. It's really, really good. If you encounter somebody with a bow and rapier, you can block their ranged attacks with this, and it will put you into defiance stance. So you're taking less damage as you close on them, and then you just start chasing them down. And you can block their ranged attacks with this if you're close, and they try to do like an evade shot. So you can actually stagger them out of the evade shot. So right when it lands, you press it, and it'll stagger them out of their evade shot, and then you just jump on them. It's insane the amount of pressure and mobility and you have with this build, just because you have the rapier, and the amount of outplay potential between the counter and riposte. Having those two abilities is just insane. Yeah, I hope you like this build. It's going to be really, really good for duels, and it's going to be really good for 3v3s, duels. You might see this on healer killers. I don't think you would as much. For healer killers, I would probably go something like this. You're going to need the haste. You're going to want to lean less into the defiant stance abilities. You could probably drop this. No, you want that, because the guaranteed crits are nice for healer killers. Yeah, for healer killer, I would go something like this for sure. Get the extra base damage. Who cares about that? You're basically just there to murder people, right? Get in, get behind a healer, and do as much damage as possible. Same basic principle as the dual build, and this is like an alternate build if you drop crosscut, but you're kind of using it more for mobility in this mode. You know, the rapier for mobility and just like an escape mechanism and get in there quick and do some damage. But then you could pull them back and directly into that, and if they start running, that's actually a pretty decent follow-up. And then you have all the mobility from rapier, right? So I don't think this is going to be as effective as like the standard healer killer builds right now. I don't think that the Greatsword is a great healer killer weapon. The Skyward Slash is good, but Blunderbuss is better. Like, let's just be real. The instant burst from Blunderbuss is just going to be way better. And you could do like a Blunderbuss build with this as a healer killer, but I don't think that's a good option. The Sword and Shield's going to be a better option for that. I mean, just by far, because Leaping Strike, the Shield Bash, you know, there's just too much that's good on Sword and Shield if you go light armor with it. Ice Gauntlet will still be good for healer killers, because you could run, you don't need Entomb, so you can run Spike, Storm, and Shower, and you could still take Unending, or Ultimate Chill, or whatever it is. Ultimate Chill and Unending Thaw are still going to be good with the healer killer, because you're not going to be overlapping anybody else's. You're just going to be using it for your own burst damage. So I think that's like the one place that Ice Gauntlet's still going to have a very big role, is the Ice Gauntlet Blunderbuss combo is going to be huge still. But if you wanted to mess around with this as like a healer killer build, you could. I would go more of this route, but I don't think it's built for it. But yeah, that's about it. You guys have a wonderful night or day, whatever it is. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you think this build is dumb, let me know in the comments. Yeah, have fun.